Greetings from Safe Harbors of the Hudson, where our mission is transforming lives and building community through housing and the arts. We're here in Safe Harbors Studio in the city of Newburgh, New York, in the heart of the Hudson Valley, launching our mission onto the airwaves. This is Safe Harbors is a new podcast mini-series from Safe Harbors Radio that tells our story through interviews with the extraordinary people who have contributed to our mission over the past quarter century. We would like to thank our presenters, Resorts World, Rhinebeck Bank, and the Rowley Fioravanti family for their generous support of Safe Harbor's 25th anniversary. Episode 1, Intrepid Beginnings. Hello, this is Lisa Silverstone, Executive Director of Safe Harbors of the Hudson. Welcome back to Safe Harbors Radio for our inaugural episode. And in celebration of our 25th year, we are delighted to have in the studio today Safe Harbors founder, Tricia Haggerty Wenz. Hello, Tricia. Welcome back to Newburgh.
Hey, Lisa. It's great to be here.
Tricia is now the Director of Development at a wonderful organization called Real Artways in Hartford, but we're not going to talk about Real Artways today. We're going to talk about Safe Harbors of the Hudson. And I'd like to hear from you, Tricia, like the origin story. How did things get started here at Safe Harbors?
Okay, oh my. Well, so to take it back even further, I have an incredible sister-in-law that founded an organization in the early 90s called Common Ground in New York City. And their first project was taking over the former Times Square Hotel and turning it into affordable supportive housing. And I had the good fortune of volunteering there multiple times, spending my Thanksgivings there, and just in awe of the work she did. Cut it now, it's now 1999. I'm in a Master's of Social Work program, which I never finished. And I'm in a group therapy, and a woman, Norma, speaks up and says, it was like, you know, when you have to do your, what is that called? The work that you have to do while you're in a master's program, like
field work?
Field work. And she says, I live in the Hotel Newburgh and I have no heat. And it started a whole conversation amongst people. I live in the Hotel Newburgh, and I put my dresser in front of my door at night because of people are knocking, looking for drugs. And I'm hearing about this place that sounds horrific. And I'm thinking about the work Roseanne does. So I called Roseanne up, and I said, there's a hotel in Newburgh. You should buy it. Thinking, be easy, right? You should do it. This is what you do, Roseanne. And so she said, She said, why don't you get more information and get back to me? So I actually drove here, and I came inside, and I was first assaulted by the smells. It just smelled like urine and smoke. It was an awful smell, and it was sad. It was this just sad place. So I started doing a little research. I went to the city manager's office. I was like, I'm just getting this information for Roseanne. So Roseanne came up here. She looked at it. We sat down at the waterfront before. There was no waterfront. There was nothing. And she's like, wow, the city needs this project. And I'm like, great, you going to buy it? She's like, no, you are. But she's like, don't worry, I'll tell you how to do it. And, you know, and it's one of those moments in your life where you're naivety and, you know, you're just like, okay, I'll buy a building.
I remember you telling me when we first met and you first started this project, you said, if I knew what it was going to take, or if I knew that I couldn't do it, I never would have started to do it. It was just that, like you said, that naive, like, oh, I can do this. Anybody can do this.
Sure. I mean, she made it look easy. I quit school, and I started the next day. And I started with, like, my son Nick's leftover composition notebook, opened it up. I met her in Nyack, and I said, what do I do? And she's like, well, you have to start an organization. So I literally wrote, step 1, start organization. And I was like, how do you do that? She's like, well, you have to get a lawyer. Step 2, get lawyer. So it's kind of funny. She's like, why don't you go to New York and meet with the Corporation for Supportive Housing? They have money. They'll be helpful. So I brought my notebook, took the train into the city. I met with a man there, and he said, okay, so you're going to want to buy this building. And he said, who's on your development team? So I opened my notebook up, and I said, what's a development team? And he looked at me, and he was like, he goes, it was like a Tuesday. He goes, why don't you get me an 8-page concept paper by the end of the week? Thinking I'm not going to do it. So I did.
So you wrote, what is a concept paper?
Yes, that was the next step. But But yeah, so it was putting together a board of directors, finding really good people like Doug Hovey,
who's coming up next on our program.
Finding, I contacted my neighbor, Neil Dreslane. Hey, I'm going to start an organization. Do you want to be on my board? And he was like, okay. And, just finding people that had enthusiasm and like, let's make this thing happen. And so we incorporated in 2000, and it took 2 years from incorporation to the purchase of the building.
Which is nothing, really, when you think back. 2 years
is
so fast to go from an idea and a marble notebook to owning a building.
Yep. And then it took another year to get the funding, right? And then construction started in 2004.
2004.
So it was 2002 we purchased the building, took a whole year to get all the funding. I think it was like a $21 million project. And then 2004 we started construction. So it was one of those instances like you just not knowing what you were actually doing was probably a good thing, And Newburgh was a little like the Wild West back then, too, right? You could just do things like, oh, what do you mean I needed to pull a permit for this dumpster, right? Well,
now that I'm working, building on the good work that Tricia did, and I wish you listeners could see this building now compared to what it was, because it's it's a beacon of hope and beauty and respect and support here in our city. And it's a tribute to you, Tricia, and your intrepidness and bravery, really. But I'm working with a development partner to build more housing in the city of Newburgh, and I'm saying, well, we can do this and we can do that. Tricia did that, and the development team looks at me, and the lawyers look at me, and the accountants look at me like, no, that doesn't happen that way anymore. There's rules and regulations now for all of that. So I do think it was a special time. Like you said, it was kind of a first in, right? There was nothing like this going on in the city of Newburgh. You were really one of the first big developments in the city of Newburgh in decades.
Yeah, I mean, there was a smaller developer who did small housing who actually ate up all of the state funding at that time. So when I showed up, he wasn't too happy.
We're not going to name names.
And tried to stop the project multiple times because it was like, wait a minute, I have I'm supposed to be getting all the state money. So we were pretty much pioneers down here, even with the gallery, right? I mean, we were the only gallery in the city for a long time. I mean, I don't know if SUNY still has a gallery.
They do, but we were the first in for many years. So that kind of leads me. Tell me a little bit about, you started talking about building this place for the residents who are living in absolutely deplorable conditions here. Tell me a little bit about the inspiration for the arts and why the arts, because it's certainly a unique model.
Yeah. So, this building, not only was it horrific, it had a horrible reputation, right? I mean, people can point to it and say that's where bad activity takes place, that's where the homeless live. And I was inspired a little bit by my research and what was happening in Providence and what they were doing around artists in Providence. And there was a project in New York. It wasn't a common ground project, although they managed it, that was housing primarily for actors. And it was an actors' equity project. So I was like, well, actors aren't going to come to Newburgh, but what if we added artists? And I thought it would do two really important things. I was like, if we bring artists into the building, people can't point to the building and say, well, that's where the homeless live. And then the people that lived in the building are residents that maybe had a mental health diagnosis or were formerly homeless. I can be an artist. No one knows my background when I'm walking in this building. And it did those two things, I felt, really remarkably. But it did a third thing that I didn't expect, which I really loved, was the intersection between the people who lived in the building and the arts. When we opened the Ann Street Gallery, and we'd be at an opening, and I'd see tenants there. And I'd see them looking at the art. And I remember early on when we first redid the lobby before the construction, like we decided to do improvements the first year just to show the tenants we're serious. Things are going to change. We bought security in right away. We did a cleanup. We changed how things went here. we put paintings up from a local artist all in the building, and one of our former tenants, Billy Ford, would sit on the couch and he said, I can't stop staring at that painting. He said, because I'm trying to figure out whether she's happy or sad. And it just really moved me to think how art could, introducing art into our tenants' lives, whose lives probably had been difficult and really on just I need to get from point A to point B. So I think bringing in the art gallery was also a really beautiful thing for the tenants.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you still see that, I hope.
Absolutely. And the performing arts?
Yeah. So, well, when I went through this big building with the former owner, one of the first times I came here, he's like, hey, I'm going to show you this thing. And I looked down, and it was, it was 4 stories of cavernous space with a stage. And he said, this was a theater. This was original theater. So I went right from that meeting to the library, to Newburgh Free Library, and through microfiche back in the day, and I discovered this amazing history with the Ritz Theater. The connection with Lucille Ball, Red Skelton, Frank Sinatra, all these incredible Louis Prima people that performed there. So I'm like, we have to save the theater. We can't. So early on in my composition notebook days, I met a
Save Theater.
Save Theater. I met a man who was going to be our development consultant to do all the applications, and he said, knock down that theater, you can make another 45 units of housing. And I said, why would I do that? And he said to me, first of all, you're not even in the business of housing. What makes you think you could be in the business of a theater?
Ooh, just watch me.
So I didn't know what to do. Here's this really smart guy with a pedigree telling me not to save the theater. So I called Roseanne up, and I probably got the best advice and this is what I stuck with for my entire time here. And always, I said, so-and-so wants me to knock down a theater and make housing. And she said, well, what's your instinct? I said, my instinct is to save the theater. And she said, Tricia, always go with your instincts. So I did.
Good advice.
He signed off, would not participate in the project.
Good riddance.
Good riddance. I did give him a big smile when we won Project of the Year. Little nod to him in the audience. He happened to be there, but not for us, just because he was at the event. But yeah, so saving the theater to me felt like, when I look back, when I look at this project, and it's still this ongoing, what you continue to do here, Lisa, is amazing. And it's, you've imagined things that I didn't even know could exist here. And it's just, I couldn't be happier. But when I look at this project and I think, well, the housing change transformed 128 lives and continue to. But it's the theater, it's the gallery, it's what you've done with the green. That's transformed the community, right? And that's why projects like this need to be so much more than just housing.
Yeah. Your inspiration really has created this incredibly innovative model for downtown redevelopment that can co-locate housing and the arts, creating equity, right, in housing, and also downtown redevelopment, economic development, cultural access, and really, like you said, destigmatizes the homeless housing kind of NIMBYism that people often have. And it's an incredible model, and I do think that you have built something incredible here, and I am just proud to have carried on your legacy. And when I took over from you and you were being compared to Mother Teresa, I thought, where do I go from here?
They don't know me that well.
We're going to continue our conversation, and we're going to be joined by Doug Hovey, Executive Director of Independent Living, who provides case management here in the building. So we'll be right back with Doug and Tricia. I would like to introduce Doug Hovey into our conversation here. If I'm not mistaken, Doug Hovey, as I said, is the CEO of Independent Living, and they provide case management services here in the building, and I'll let you speak to all of the other good work you do here in the city of Newburgh. But Doug, you were here, if I'm not mistaken, your team was here even before Tricia purchased the building, is that right?
We were. We actually opened our office on the second floor here in 1999 with funding through the New York State Office of Mental Health. And we were working under very, very difficult circumstances, as you can imagine. And you know that because you both were here early on and you saw, and Tricia talked about it and described and characterized the condition of the building and the condition of the people that lived here. It was just terrible. So it was so difficult for me and my staff to really make a meaningful difference. And then I had the great opportunity of meeting Tricia when she came here with this incredible vision. And I'm just getting chills listening to your conversation a few minutes ago and listening to the story all over again, through Tricia's lens and Lisa through your lens too, because you came in and you, as Tricia pointed out, you have really carried the torch and have done an amazing job of continuing the transformation of this incredible space and making it more than just a home for the people that live here. But back in 99, 2000, when I first met Tricia, she had this crazy idea that she was going to buy this building. And there was a lot of skepticism in the community, particularly from some of our legislative leaders. And I remember at that point, Tricia invited me to participate in a series of meetings. And we went out and we visited with just about every legislator, every county official, every city, town, local official that we possibly could. And we met with a lot of the community-based organizations, and still there was a level of skepticism, like, who is this young girl who thinks she's going to buy the Hotel Newburgh and transform it into a beautiful place to live, for 128 people, and introduce the arts? Well, I tell you, not for a minute was I skeptical about the vision. And shortly thereafter, Tricia invited me to go to New York City, and we went to the Times Square Hotel, which, as she mentioned before, Roseanne Haggerty was the founder of Common Ground in New York City, and they had transformed the Times Square Hotel into 600 some beautiful apartments. And I remember walking through the building with Tricia and her pointing out that you don't know who's who in the building. It could be a doctor, it could be a CPA, a lawyer, or it could be somebody that was formerly homeless. You just didn't know the difference, and that was the total integration effect of Common Ground, which is what Tricia emulated here at the Cornerstone Residence. So it was really an exciting time. And I can talk about the construction period too. We had so much fun during the construction period where Tricia made sure that I was involved, and the contractors would literally carry me in my wheelchair through the building so I could see phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, all the various stages of development to make sure that it was fully accessible to all members of our community. It was an exciting time.
Yeah, I remember those meetings with legislators. I had a meeting with one, a county assemblyman who told me that this project was never going to happen.
I remember that.
And he said, matter of fact, I will make sure it doesn't happen. He said, and I'd like to never see you in my office again.
Then was he one fighting for the ribbon cutting?
One of them. But the funny thing was, the next day I woke up and I had a meeting with a nun that was over at Newburgh Ministry. And I'm like, what's the point? He holds the key because he needed to sign the letter that goes to DCD, the funding source in the state, to say that he supported it. And he already told me he would sign an opposite letter if I ever, tried to get this project started. So I'm meeting with this nun, and I'm sitting there, and she offered me a glass of warm V8. And I'm like...
I think that was Sister Joanne, maybe.
No, not Sister Joanne. And she said, have you met with so-and-so yet? And I said, actually yesterday. And she said, well, is he supportive? And I said, no. She said, I am godmother to his child. She said, I am going to call his office right now and tell him that he needs to get you a letter of support. And she did.
Unbelievable.
You gotta love the nuns.
Unbelievable.
Really love the nuns. They're getting the stuff done.
Yeah.
So that is a true story. So if it wasn't for her, maybe none of this would have happened.
And I remember at the time, there were, maybe 60 people still living in the building at the time. And Tricia was running around we've got to figure out where we're going to relocate these people. We can't make them homeless. That's, antithetical to what we're here for. So during the construction phase, right? And we tried. I mean, I've looked at the hotel up the street, that fell through. We looked at other alternative sites over on 17K and around the region to try to relocate folks during the construction phase. But as it turned out, we kept people in the building. Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3. And I remember going through that process where we would renovate one section of the building into beautiful new apartments and move the people into that section. And then we'd do the next section and keep kind of moving people around until we were done with Phase 3.
And when you see the pictures of the construction, that's astounding.
Unbelievable.
Because it just looks like it was gutted from end to end. So the fact that people were able to live here and you were able to figure out how to checkerboard them is incredible.
Yeah. Now, I used to be heavily involved with the Newburgh Rotary Club, and I was actually chairman of the Rotary back in 2000, 2001. And I had a gentleman, after the construction was done, so it was a few years later, Mr. Roth, Bob Roth, and his wife Roz, they wanted a tour of the Cornerstone. So I said, sure, come on down. I take them for a tour. We're in the green room. And I gave them a few minutes, and I noticed they were getting a little bit emotional. They were holding hands as they were walking around the perimeter and looking at pictures on the wall. And they came back and said to me, we were married here in 1962. Oh, and this is such an emotional experience for us. Thank you so much for sharing this. And, and I explained to them that Tricia was the vision behind this entire transformation. And they were so grateful, that this building has been restored. And
people come back often with stories like that. I had my first date here in the Ritz Theater. I actually had a woman at a program not long ago, an elderly woman, who was an usherette in the theater when Pearl Harbor was bombed.
Wow.
And she was telling me the story of we were usherettes and the theater closed and we were all walking home. So this building holds so many memories for people, and people who had happy times here and then saw it go into this very sad decline where, like you said, it was just these terrible smell of death and urine and just grim, and to come back and be sitting watching a movie, going to an art opening, seeing healthy, happy people walking around the building it's an incredible full circle, because so many people from Newburgh, they're Newburghers for life, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of those kind of stories of people who have their firsts here, have had so many occasions, happy occasions here.
And Lisa and Doug, I think what a project like this can show is that you could do such a positive transformation without pushing people out.
Right.
That gentrification is not the way.
No.
That anyone...
It's centering people in solutions. That's what we need to do. 100%. We don't need to say, it's time for us to redevelop and re-energize our downtown, so we're going to make housing for you folks out there. No, right. You can be centered in all of those solutions. And I think that was a model, and be a part of the solution. And that's the model that you created.
And that's the model
here.
You created.
Yeah. Welcome back to Safe Harbors Radio. We're in the studio today with Tricia Haggerty Wenz, the founder of Safe Harbors of the Hudson, and Doug Hovey, CEO of Independent Living, who provides our case management in our building. And Tricia, can you take us back to the early days when Doug was working in the building, as he was telling us about earlier, with his team really struggling to make a difference in people's lives? You came along with this incredible vision. How did you partner, and what did that look like?
Well, so there was a continuum of care early on. I was out in Goshen, those meetings, and I would go to those, and our colleagues in the world of, social services were very skeptical of this project. When I first showed up and I explained what we're doing, and after the first meeting, Doug came up to me and said, I love it. My offices are in there. How can I help? I want to see this happen. So Doug became a really valuable and important ally to this project. He's so well respected for the work he does in the community, but he got it. He got it right away. He got the value of it, and he wanted to be a part of it. There was an immediate connection between the two of us. I trusted him right away. And then we got $1.5 million from the Office of Mental Health and 39 dedicated 39 apartments here for people with a mental health diagnosis. And every one of those people that were skeptical wanted to be our support service partner. I got letters from everybody, and it just was going to be Doug from the beginning, because Doug knew that the value of this project. So he was in the trenches early on with me and with the tenants, and they were able to, I think, back in 99 and 2000, before we bought the building, their work was more demand responsive because of limited resources at that time. It was helping people in emergency situations. But because Doug brought a significant amount of people over here, we built a foundation of support that went beyond just being demand responsive, and made all the difference in the world for people. Because the most important thing was, at the very least, to keep people housed, and to make sure that we had people on site that were willing to do what they can to ensure people that they were still able to pay their rent, they were getting to work, that they had job opportunities. So it was an easy partnership from day one.
Yeah. And tell us about how things changed for you when the building transformed into what it is today.
Oh yeah, I mean, amazing transformation. But you know, as soon as Tricia and I met, we connected right away, and it was instantly, you know, obvious that she was most concerned about the people that lived here, and the people of this community. That's what her motivation was, and that's what drove the vision behind the transformation. But, you know, the supportive housing model, that dynamic, and this was the project of the Northeast. I mean, you know, recognized all around the region, and I'm not just talking about this region, I'm talking about, you know, the Northeast, really, because it was such an innovative and progressive design. That concept of bringing a not-for-profit partner that provides services together with a developer and building operator, and then bringing in a state agency partner like the Office of Mental Health, who, as Tricia pointed out, really sponsors 39 of the beds here. And we did that all in one fell swoop. In 1 year, we had 39 beds supported. So we were in a very good position to kind of, you know, demonstrate the power of this very progressive model. We hit it off right from the start. You know, we got along very well. And as I said before, we left no stone unturned in terms of who we spoke to talk about the mission, the vision of Safe Harbors. And it was just a great time, a great experience.
Doug offered me a level of legitimacy that I couldn't have had here, you know. People sort of, Doug was like, okay, if Doug supports this, then this has to be good. And Doug was able, like even early on, I think, getting Senator Larkin involved, and to Senator Larkin's credit, he actually got the project and was supportive and always supportive of it. And Doug facilitated that connection, which was very, very valuable to us.
Senator Larkin was always a champion for all people. He really was. You know, in a very nonpartisan way, and was instantly supportive of this particular project.
And always.
Always supportive all through the years. And, you know, the other thing that didn't hurt is the fact that Tricia and I are both Pisces. So, you know, we're our heads are in the clouds, but we're smart enough to hire talented people to keep our feet muddy, you know. But, you know, she's a visionary, and I immediately could see that vision. And as I said before, Tricia took me down to New York City, and we saw the Prince George Hotel and the transformation there, and the Times Square Hotel, and several other projects that Common Ground had done prior, which is really the model that we emulated here in Newburgh. But it was so innovative and progressive for our area, and just a very exciting time for our community.
I think it still is. I mean, maybe that's not a great thing, but we still are a very unique model. And
we were the envy. We really were of the local area. You know, of all the community-based health and human service organizations. We were very envious of this model. You know, not in a bad way. Just that, wow, look what they've done. And you know, subsequent to that, there were several other organizations who, as a result, got invested in the supportive housing model. You know?
I think that the supportive housing model is certainly taken off, but the uniqueness of co-locating and integrating the arts is something that I feel like you were able to do it because you didn't know you couldn't do it.
Exactly.
Because I have people, other developers reaching out to me all the time saying, how did you get the funds to do a gallery and a theater and a park? Like, how did we get the funds to do all those things? So we are still kind of a unique model in the integration of all of the things that we do.
It's funny that you say that. I was at the closing for the first amount of funding that we got through the state to purchase the building. And at the closing, there was all these people were coming in. They're like, wait a minute, we're buying a theater too? I mean, it almost stopped at that moment. And I did do some quick tap dancing.
When you look at the deed, it's actually crossed out. The theater is crossed out of all the closing documents.
Wow.
So it was we didn't really buy the theater.
That was that critical moment.
There were literally X's through the
they were
theater.
Just like, what is going on? You're saying it's housing, but there's this theater.
Unbelievable.
We're not buying a theater.
And so how did you tap dance around that issue?
I kept talking about the value of the theater for the tenants. And if we want to provide these lives that go beyond, these were people that were they were living in housing that no one cared about them. No one cared, and they lived here, no one cared. Now we're going to have a gallery, we're going to have a theater that they're going to participate in. GED program, support services on site. So I had to keep, it was a crazy, it almost all fell apart. They must have read that meeting that just kept crossing.
Right, just kept crossing it out. But the Supportive Housing Network of New York, which is New York State's SHINY, right? They are our trade association, basically. And I just got a call from them last week to see if we would sit on a panel, me and one of our residents, to speak exactly about this. How do the arts help our resident population? And we are, again, I hate to keep saying the same word, but we are really unique in this space. So to be asked to speak about the power of the arts to transform lives and communities, right?
It really is. I mean, it changes the whole cultural dynamic and feel of the living space, to incorporate the arts and to do all the amazing things that you guys have done, Tricia, and then you, Lisa, continuing in that same vision, the outdoor space is just beautiful.
And the economic development, when Tricia first built the space, there was always a notion that we would have commercial partners, and left a couple of street level spaces to be filled. And the fact that we could attract at a time when there wasn't a lot of foot traffic in Newburgh, there wasn't a lot of purchasing power in Newburgh, that we were able to attract a wonderful coffee shop and a collaborative work share space because we had built this model that people were coming here and spending their money to go to a show, to come to a farmer's market on the park. It makes it an attractive space for commercial as well.
You really spearheaded, getting two Alice's here today. I remember our first weeks working together, and you said to me, I want a project, and I think I want to get a coffee shop to come in, and you took it and flew with it, having a vibrant coffee shop in this space has really been, I'm sure, fantastic for the community.
And the residents are there all the time, and it's, again, that blurry line between who's who here, it doesn't matter. Yep. Were you formerly unhoused? Are you living with mental health diagnoses, or are you the lawyer down the street? No one knows. And
the integration of our staff, the employees that work here, the employees that work for Safe Harbors, and the employees that work for independent living, have really just integrated beautifully. Yeah. And it was sort of seamless, and not to sound cliche, but nonetheless, we work together as such a great team, and supporting the needs of the building, supporting the needs, and most importantly, of the people that live here. So, and it's really just been, so remarkable. And, we're sitting in this space right now, and I was reminding Tricia that this was Tricia's first office. She had her office set up in here. And in fact, she had another desk right next to me. She said, that's your desk, So we were really, seamless in integrating the whole program concept with the building and its impact on the local community. Yeah.
Hello, and welcome back to Safe Harbors Radio. We've got Tricia Haggerty Wenz and Doug Hovey here. And guess who just stumbled into the studio is Ramona Monteverde, Safe Harbors Director of Operations. And Ramona and Tricia go way back, so I'm going to let them tell their story.
Ramona was the very first person I hired. So one of the first things that I thought we needed was somebody that actually knew how to manage a building. Because
That is helpful.
I did not know. And so I had interviewed a bunch of people, and then I met Ramona, and we walked through the building, and she started saying stuff like, this needs to be a fire exit, there needs to be a safety bar on here, all these things that she knew that I realized, wow, Ramona knows what she's talking about. So I offered her the job, and she accepted, and this is why I will adore Ramona forever and ever, because I said, we're buying the building on December 1st. So here she is, she's an established person working in, down in Westchester at a job. She's got a job, she's got benefits, and I'm like, come work for me, this new organization with less money.
Yeah, and no benefits.
Nothing. We'll
And
make
no
it up.
office space.
No.
Not even a phone.
Not even a phone. And I said, we're purchasing the building on December 1st. So then I got a call that the closing was postponed. And now it's December 17th. So I call Ramona, and I was like, closing was postponed. We can't start for another 2 weeks. And she was paused for a minute, and she just said, I need to know if this is real. And I said, Ramona, it's real. And she believed me and trusted me that it was real. And 2 weeks later, we were in here.
And 25 years later, here we sit.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah, we're still going.
Yep.
Safe Harbors is just doing fantastic. All the programming, so.
Ramona is winding down her time here at Safe Harbors and is retiring at the end of June. But again, what an incredible legacy she built with Tricia and Doug in this building. And you will be sorely missed. But I know you have lots of stories. I've heard them over the years.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Ramona really taught me a lot, too. I mean, I remember our first Thanksgiving, we're here the Friday after Thanksgiving. Ramona's like, Tricia, most people actually have off the day after Thanksgiving. I was like, oh, okay. Like, most people aren't here on Saturdays just because a group of kids from St. John's say they want to help us clean the building. She was like, there needs to be boundaries.
We still struggle with boundaries.
Well,
we definitely do.
And remember I said, Tricia and I are Pisces, so our head is always in the clouds, but we're smart enough to hire really talented people that keep our feet on the ground.
And Ramona's
And
also
Ramona-
I was going to say, but she's
Right.
also a
No,
Pisces.
there goes that theory out the window. But Ramona, you have always kept us grounded. There's no question about that.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know about that, but thank you.
Behind the scenes, getting it done.
Yeah.
And it wasn't easy. There was no rule book. There was, she started work the first day. There is no employee handbook. We bought the building, and people started putting piles of cash, on the thing and checks. And Gary Smith was our first accountant, and he quit because he said,
He was crying.
Kathy Jones, our former CFO, said, we made our accountant cry.
Yeah, he was like, I know that you did this, but who said you could? He said to me, like, who gave you permission? Because he's like, there's money and checks, and we had
Pulling it out of our pocket. I had it in my pocketbook. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
so we had two funny things happen the day that we purchased the building. The day before, do you remember there was in one of the commercial spaces, there's a place called Fat Beats.
Yes.
PHATBEATZ. And they were paying, at that time, it was a lot of money. It was $1,500 a month. And I'm like, this is great. They were part of our whole financial, P&L. They're going to give us money every month. They were raided.
Police shut them
The
down.
police shut them down the day before. And you wondered, how were they spending all that rent? And they were just selling beepers, right? It was a big drug bust, and they found drugs and guns in there.
Oh,
But, so maybe the police, kind of did us a favor, because they knew we were coming in, we got to get rid of these guys. But the good news on that was, that is where we got all of our office
Treasure
equipment.
hunts.
We went in there, we're like, all right, they left, and now we have desks, and look, there's paper and pencils and everything.
I remember going through that building, we'll take that, we'll take that.
We used all of that for our office. And then it was kind of funny. Do you remember we had those kids come in for security cameras? one of the problems with this building, there was a lot of illegal activity, and even renting by the hour was happening here, so we knew we had to change things right away. So we had these young guys coming in, and they wanted to show us this whole, this is what, like watch a video of their, and we're like, we don't have time, we just bought this building, we're like, there's leaks, we're running all around. One of our tenants died the night before we bought the building. He was killed riding his bike on Broadway. Oh. So his brothers came, we just brought the building, and they came to clean out his apartment. And meanwhile, these guys are showing this security system. And the brothers opened the door, and he was a hoarder. And it was top to bottom. And they said, I don't know if we can do this. And the security guys said, we can put the cameras in, but we need a deposit of $2,500. So we went back to those guys and said, we'd be happy to clean out that apartment for you if you want to make a donation of $2,500. Right. I mean, that was the kind of stuff. So they wrote the check, we wrote the check for the security guys. It was amazing, but we never missed a payroll.
Whatever it took to get it done, right?
But we never did. We were able to kind of cobble it together.
Intrepid. That's the word. Intrepid.
Unbelievable.
I remember, we were doing all the work in the building. It was just crazy, just trying to get it to a point where we wanted it to be clean for the tenants. And, we were cleaning out the old coffee shop and the counter so that we could have Thanksgiving in there, right? Outside in the hallway, when you walk into the vestibule, right past that, the ceiling was caving in. So here I am standing on scaffolding, patching it and plastering it, the music's blasting. Everybody's running back and forth, just trying to get ready for the Thanksgiving. Those were the days.
Those were crazy.
Those were the days.
It's midnight. Oh, it's time to go home.
Yeah, right.
I mean, your, willingness to do anything, Ramona, like just to keep things going it's so admirable. Like, you didn't have to go along with this crazy scheme, but you did.
And I feel like that is the kind of the magic of the founder and working for the founder, is that things over time have structures, and there's policies, and there's procedures, and those are all really important. But there's something magical about that time when it all begins, and you're here at midnight, and you don't have an accountant, and you've got piles of cash, but you're making it happen. Like you said, you never miss a payroll, and everybody's kind of caught up in that spirit of what we can do here. I just feel like, to be part of that, you three are really lucky to have been part of something, just a spark, like a magic spark and a magic moment where you could just make things happen. I think I envy it.
The vision prevails, even if by the seat of our pants, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was just, you did what you had to do to make it come together, And that's what pioneers do.
Absolutely.
And Tricia had that pioneering vision. And we jumped on board and said, yeah, we'll do this. Are you kidding me? We're going to make it happen because we believed in it.
And how lucky is Newburgh that that you all joined forces and created this incredible anchor that has continued to spark better and better things for our city. And we have to wrap. But what an incredible inaugural show. How great to have you, Tricia. Thank you for coming all the way from Hartford and joining us back in the building today. And Doug, of course. And Ramona, what a nice surprise to have you join us today.
Great way to close out
this was, I'm just thrilled. And there's so much more to talk about. And we will probably have you back. And I know we'll have you back, Ramona.
Love to. And Lisa, thank you. I mean, there was no better person to take the ball and run with it.
Appreciate it.
100%. I'm just so pleased. I feel so much proud of what you've done and, what you've imagined here. So thank you so much.
Well, it's tough when you're taking over from Mother Teresa, so I appreciate it.
Well, it's better than Mother Superior, right?
Touche. Well, thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next time on Safe Harbors Radio.